She said her male, work husband deserved a key to our house for emergencies. I replied, safety first. So I changed the locks and gave my mom a key instead for my own emergency. Her jaw hit the floor when her work husband ended up stranded on our porch. I, 32M, thought I had everything figured out. A solid job as an IT consultant, a comfortable house in the suburbs, and a wife who seemed happy enough. We had been married for 4 years, together for 7. The kind of relationship that had settled into a comfortable routine. Or so I believed. The trouble started about 8 months ago when she got promoted to senior project manager at her marketing firm. With the promotion came longer hours, more stress, and most importantly, a new colleague. She mentioned him casually at first, just another team member, someone she worked closely with on high-stakes campaigns. But within weeks, his name started appearing in every dinner conversation. He understood her work stress. He made her laugh during brutal deadline crunches. He was, as she kept insisting, her work husband. I brushed it off initially. People have work friends. It seemed harmless enough. But then the dynamic shifted. She started texting him at odd hours. Weekend mornings while we were having coffee. Late nights when we were watching television. Her phone was always face down now, something she had never done before. When I asked about it, she would roll her eyes and tell me I was being paranoid. He was just a colleague. Nothing more. The real breaking point came on a Tuesday evening. I had gotten home early from a client meeting that wrapped up ahead of schedule. She was on the phone in the kitchen, laughing in a way I had not heard in months. The kind of genuine, unreserved laughter that used to be reserved for us. I stood in the doorway, unnoticed, and listened. She was talking about some inside joke from the office, something about a disastrous presentation and an embarrassing autocorrect incident. When she finally noticed me, the laughter died immediately. She told him she had to go and hung up quickly. That night, she brought it up herself. She had been thinking, she said, about giving him a key to our house. For emergencies. He lived alone, about 20 minutes away, and sometimes worked late at her place when they had tight deadlines. What if something happened and she needed help? What if there was a fire or a break-in and I was traveling for work? He could be there in minutes. It was just practical, she insisted. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. It never came. She was completely serious. She actually wanted to give another man, a man I had never even met, a key to our home. The home we had bought together. The place where we were supposed to be building a life. I kept my voice calm and asked her if she realized how that sounded. She got defensive immediately. She accused me of being controlling and insecure. She said I did not understand the demands of her job or the importance of having reliable support. Her work husband, she stressed again, was just that, a professional partnership built on mutual respect and trust. Nothing romantic. Nothing inappropriate. I told her I needed time to think about it. She seemed satisfied with that response and dropped the subject. But I was not thinking about whether to agree. I was thinking about what this request really meant. Over the next few days, I did some digging. Not because I wanted to invade her privacy, but because something felt deeply wrong. I checked our phone records online. The number of texts between them was staggering. Hundreds per week. I looked at our credit card statements and noticed charges at restaurants I had never been to, coffee shops she claimed to be too busy to visit with me. I started paying closer attention to her schedule. The late nights at the office became more frequent. The weekend work sessions became routine. One evening, I came home to find them in our living room. He was sitting on our couch, laptop open, papers spread across the coffee table. She was in the kitchen making coffee. They both looked up when I walked in, and for a split second, I saw guilt flash across her face. She quickly recovered and introduced us. He stood up, extended his hand, and smiled like we were old friends. He thanked me for being so understanding about their work demands. He said my wife talked about me all the time. I shook his hand and kept my expression neutral. I asked him how long he planned to be there. She answered for him. Probably another few hours. They had a pitch due the next morning. I nodded, went upstairs, and locked myself in the home office. I could hear their muffled voices, occasional laughter, the clinking of coffee mugs. I sat there in the dark and realized I was done playing the understanding husband. The next morning, after she left for work, I called a locksmith. I had every lock in the house changed within 2 hours. New deadbolts, new doorknob locks, even the side garage entrance. Then I called my mother and asked her if she wanted a key to the house. She was surprised but agreed. I told her it was for emergencies. Safety first, I explained. That evening, I waited for her to come home. She arrived around 8, later than usual. She walked up to the front door and tried her key. It did not work. She tried again. And again. I watched through the window as confusion turned to frustration. She pulled out her phone and called me. I answered on the third ring. She asked me why her key was not working. I told her I had changed the locks. There was a long silence. She asked me why I would do that. I reminded her of her own words, safety first. I had been thinking about her emergency preparedness suggestion and realized she was right. We needed someone reliable with a spare key, someone who would put our family first. So I gave one to my mother. For my own emergency. She told me to open the door. I said I would, but we needed to talk first. She insisted we could talk inside. I told her we were going to talk right now, out there, or she could spend the night somewhere else. Her voice changed. The frustration turned to anger. She accused me of being childish and manipulative. I asked her if she understood how I felt when she suggested giving another man access to our home. She said it was completely different. I asked her to explain how. She could not. I told her that if she wanted to come inside, she needed to hand over her phone. I wanted to see the messages between her and her work husband. She refused immediately. She said it was a violation of privacy. I told her that her privacy became my concern when she started prioritizing another man over her actual husband. She hung up. I watched her stand on the porch for a few minutes, phone to her ear, pacing back and forth. Then a car pulled up. I recognized it from the one time I had seen him leave our house. He got out, walked up to the porch, and put his hand on her shoulder. They talked for a few minutes. She looked back at the door, at me watching through the window, and then got in his car. They drove away. I sat in the dark living room for hours, replaying every moment of the last 8 months. The missed anniversaries, the canceled weekend plans, the growing distance between us, all the small signs I had ignored because I wanted to trust her, because I wanted to believe her work husband was exactly what she claimed. Nothing more than a colleague. She came back the next morning. I had not slept. She looked like she had not either. She rang the doorbell, and I opened it. She did not try to come inside. She just stood there, arms crossed, waiting for me to speak first. I asked her where she had spent the night. She told me it was none of my business. I told her it became my business when she chose to leave with him instead of fighting for our marriage. She said I was the one who locked her out. I reminded her that I had offered to let her in if she was willing to be honest. She said I had no right to demand access to her private conversations. I told her that spouses do not have private conversations that they are too ashamed to share. We stood there in the doorway, two people who had promised to build a life together, now facing each other like strangers. She asked me what I wanted. I told her I wanted the truth, not the sanitized version she had been feeding me for months. The actual truth about what was happening between her and her work husband. She took a deep breath and told me there was nothing happening. They were close friends. They spent a lot of time together because of work. But it was not romantic. It was not an affair. She swore on everything that mattered. I asked her if she loved him. She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. She tried to backtrack. She said she cared about him as a colleague and friend. But she loved me. She was committed to our marriage. This whole situation was just a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by my insecurity. I told her to check her phone. She looked confused. I repeated it. Check your phone, right now, and read me the last 10 messages between you two. She refused. I asked her why. If there was nothing inappropriate, she could not share them. She said it was the principle of the thing. I told her the principle of marriage was honesty and trust, and she had shattered both. She started crying. She said I was ruining everything, that she had worked so hard for this promotion and this career, and I was trying to sabotage it by making her choose between her job and her marriage. I told her I never asked her to choose between her job and me. I asked her to choose between her husband and another man. She wiped her eyes and said she needed time. Time to think. Time to figure out what she wanted. I told her she could have all the time she needed, but she was not doing her thinking in our house. I would pack some of her things, and she could stay with a friend or her mother or her work husband. I did not care. But until she was ready to prioritize our marriage, she was not welcome back. She looked at me like I had slapped her. She asked if I was serious. I told her I had never been more serious about anything in my life. She nodded slowly, went to her car, and drove away. Update 1. She stayed away for 3 days. During that time, I heard from her mother, her sister, even a couple of her friends. They all said the same thing. I was overreacting. It was just a work friendship. She was under a lot of stress. I needed to be more supportive. I listened politely and told each of them that they were welcome to their opinions, but they were not living in my marriage. On the fourth day, she showed up with her sister. They rang the doorbell together, and when I answered, her sister immediately launched into a speech about how I was being unreasonable and controlling. I let her finish, then told her she was not invited into this conversation. This was between my wife and me. Her sister looked offended but stepped back. My wife asked if we could talk inside. I let her in, and we sat in the living room where I had watched her with him just days earlier. She looked exhausted. She told me she had been staying at a hotel because she did not want to burden anyone with our problems. She said she had been doing a lot of thinking. She admitted that maybe she had gotten too close to him, that maybe the boundaries had become blurred, but she insisted nothing physical had happened. No kissing, no affair. Just an emotional connection that had grown stronger than she realized. She said she could see now how that might have made me uncomfortable, and she was sorry. I asked her if she was willing to cut off contact with him. She said it was not that simple. They worked together. They had projects in progress. She could not just stop communicating with him. I told her that was unacceptable. If she wanted to save our marriage, she needed to establish clear boundaries, which meant minimal professional contact only, and absolutely no personal communication. She said I was asking her to damage her career. I told her she was choosing to prioritize her career over her marriage, and that was her decision to make. But she needed to understand that every choice has consequences. She asked what I wanted from her. I laid it out clearly. Full transparency. I wanted access to her phone, her email, her social media. I wanted to know where she was and who she was with. Not because I enjoyed being controlling, but because she had destroyed my trust and now needed to rebuild it. If she was not willing to do that, then we had nothing left to discuss. She said those terms were degrading, that I was treating her like a criminal. I told her she was the one who had created this situation by prioritizing another man and hiding the extent of their relationship. These were the consequences of her choices. She stood up and said she needed more time. I told her she could have until the end of the week. After that, I was filing for separation. She left without another word. Update 2. The deadline came and went. She did not call. She did not text. She did not show up at the door. I contacted a divorce attorney the following Monday and started the paperwork. He told me it was going to be messy because we had joint assets and no prenuptial agreement, but he would do his best to protect my interests. 2 weeks into the process, I got a call from her work husband. He started by saying he knew I probably did not want to hear from him, but he felt like he needed to set the record straight. He told me that nothing inappropriate had happened between them. They were just friends. He valued her as a colleague and cared about her well-being, but there was no romantic involvement. He said he was sorry if his presence in her life had caused problems in our marriage, but he had no intention of pursuing anything beyond friendship. I listened to his entire speech without interrupting. Then I asked him a simple question. If they were just friends and colleagues, why had she chosen to leave with him the night I locked her out instead of staying and fighting for her marriage? He did not have an answer. I told him that whether or not they had physically crossed a line was irrelevant. She had emotionally replaced me with him, and that was enough to end our marriage. Then I hung up. A few days later, my wife finally reached out. She asked if we could meet to discuss the divorce terms. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop halfway between our house and where she was staying. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting in a corner booth, looking smaller and more fragile than I had ever seen her. She told me she wanted to try to work things out, that she had been seeing a therapist who helped her realize she had been using her work relationship as an escape from problems in our marriage that she did not know how to address. She admitted she had feelings for him, but insisted she had never acted on them. She said she understood now that she had been unfair to me, and she wanted a chance to make things right. I asked her if she had cut off contact with him. She said she had requested a transfer to a different team, which was pending approval. Until then, she had limited their interactions to email only, strictly professional. She showed me her phone as proof. I scrolled through the messages. They were brief, work-related, nothing personal. I checked the call logs. No calls to or from his number in over a week. I handed the phone back and told her I appreciated the effort, but it was too late. The trust was gone. Even if she had never physically cheated, she had chosen him over me repeatedly for months. She had prioritized his comfort over mine. She had been willing to give him access to our home while simultaneously pushing me further away. Those were not mistakes. Those were choices. And those choices told me everything I needed to know about where I stood in her priorities. She started crying again. She begged me to reconsider. She said she loved me. She said she would do anything to fix this. I told her that if she had loved me the way a wife should love her husband, we would not be sitting in a coffee shop discussing divorce terms. We would be home, working through our problems together. She asked me if there was anything she could do to change my mind. I told her no. Some things, once broken, cannot be fixed. Trust is one of them. We spent the next hour going over the logistics. Who would keep the house? How we would divide our savings? What would happen to the furniture, the car, the joint credit cards? It was mechanical and cold, the dismantling of a life we had built together. When we finished, she asked me one last question. Did I ever really love her? Or was I just looking for an excuse to leave? I told her I loved her more than I thought possible. That was why this hurt so much. If I had not cared, I would have just let her keep her work husband and played the role of the oblivious spouse. But I loved her enough to demand better, to demand honesty and loyalty and respect. And when she could not provide those things, I loved myself enough to walk away. She nodded, wiped her eyes, and stood up. She said she hoped I found someone who made me happy. I told her I hoped she figured out what she really wanted before she destroyed another relationship. Then I walked out. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. She kept her car and some of the furniture. I kept the house. We split the savings down the middle. It was as clean as a divorce can be, all things considered. I heard through mutual friends that she and her work husband did eventually date for a few months after everything was finalized. But apparently, once the thrill of the forbidden wore off, they realized they did not have much in common outside of work. They broke up before the end of the year. She tried to reach out to me after that, asking if we could talk. I did not respond. I changed my number, blocked her on all social media, and moved on. My mother still has the spare key to my house. She checks in every few weeks, brings groceries when I am too busy, and reminds me that I deserve someone who will choose me first. She is right. Looking back now, I do not regret changing those locks. It was the moment I stopped being passive in my own life. The moment I decided that my self-respect mattered more than keeping up appearances. She thought she could have both, a devoted husband at home and an emotional affair at work. She thought I would just accept whatever crumbs of attention she was willing to offer. But the moment she asked for that key, she showed me exactly where I ranked in her priorities. And I showed her that I was not willing to settle for second place in my own marriage. Some people called me petty for changing the locks. Some said I should have been more understanding or fought harder to save the marriage. But I know the truth. I did not end our marriage. She did, the first time she texted him good night before texting me. The first time she laughed with him in a way she no longer laughed with me. The first time she chose his comfort over mine. I just refused to pretend otherwise. My house is quieter now, emptier, but it is mine. And that is worth more than clinging to a marriage where I was never going to be enough. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.